Welcome to the Millennial Method podcast, where I dive into the personal stories of millennials that have chased their dreams, overcome challenges, and redefined success in this pivotal era. My guest for today is Aaron Yabes. He is a photographer, videographer, one of my business partners, and he has worked with clients such as Kaiser Permanente, superstar athletes such as Chris Godwin and Danny Swanson through his work with the CHEACODE Foundation, which is a nonprofit that wants to end the stigma towards seeking mental health support, founded by Dr. Armando Gonzalez. And Aaron is one of the most resilient people that I know. He left his healthcare career to pursue creative work full-time, and he had to move a few times to develop this career. He's overcome some of his own mental health battles, and every time I chat with Aaron, he's always got this chill, low-key energy that makes you feel super comfortable when you talk. It's someone you could definitely talk about life with. And I had an awesome time talking to Aaron about just everything, and I hope you enjoy this episode. So without further ado, here is Aaron Yabes. Yo, Aaron.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good, man. Can't complain.
You in the library?
I'm in the library today. Shout out to MLK. I think I heard
Sounds
you're
it.
very familiar with this library.
Oh, dude, that was my second home in college, and it's
Exactly.
like those little rooms are soundproof, so it's really nice.
Yeah, it's the. I realized that they have a lot of conference rooms here, so
Perfect place for a
why not take a
podcast.
call? Perfect place for a podcast.
Yeah, man. So I thought we could start off with a quote from your IG. I think you're very familiar with it. It's inhale inspiration, exhale expression. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means? What that does that mean to you?
Yeah, I forgot exactly where I saw that quote, but it was definitely like during the Tumblr days. So I held on to that quote. When I saw that, I was like, "Wow, that's like such a very organic way to see things as a creative, not just a creative but also in life. Is like there's so many things out there in the world we're inspired by. We choose what we breathe, right? And
Yeah,
what we exhale is that too. Like just how plants, like they breathe in like oxygen, they breathe out something good in the world. you know
yeah. You've been
so
putting out some. I definitely want to talk about like your work and just doing good in the world, because I mean you've worked with like nonprofits, and we own a business together where we just capture love stories. Um, but I want to go back a little bit in time, because back in the day, one of the first times I met you was at like a photography meetup, right? It
yeah,
was with our boy David. He, he's also our business partner, also one of our closest friends. Introduced me to a lot of the creative homies, and dude, we were like literally chasing stars,
for real.
astrophotography. You were one of the first people I knew that was like just killing it in the travel game, and it really inspired me, like in terms of my work. So I wanted to start off with a little bit of some quick hitters in travel. What do you say?
Let's do it. Let's run it, man. Always like to go to memory lane.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So tell me, what is one of your favorite places that everyone you think? What is one of the places that everyone you think should visit?
I think definitely if you're a you know an appreciator of like landscape, I think Iceland would be like
Oh,
one of my
yep.
top places to do it at, because it's such a surreal environment and everything is so close to each other. And especially being from California, like you're never gonna see that kind of landscape. So you know, there's waterfalls like 20 minutes down the road, and you see another vista like 5 minutes down the road, a cave. Like if you drive down, and the island's only like 6 hours, from the other end to the other end. So I think that's one of my top of my head. If I were to go back there again, an opportunity to go back there again, I would. And if you just like to hike, explore, and just see crazy views, Iceland would definitely be like hands down
Banger
be a
Central.
place to go.
Um, okay, most underrated places to visit.
Underrated. Ooh, man, that's a good question. I think, oh man, I haven't explored, many places enough, but underrated place.
A lot of people don't know about.
A lot of people don't know about. Wow. Let me think about this one. Because I would say, I would say in the fall. Like if you haven't been to like the June Lake area, which is in Mammoth area,
Hmm.
I think that's a super dope place to explore. Like, it's one of my best like experiences to explore in the fall, because you have that, and you also have like Alabama Hills. I think, which is
Yeah.
like, I think underrated, because it's actually a lot of the Western movies were shot before back in the day.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a place called Movie Flats there. You see all the cowboy scenes and a lot of rocks and desert vibes there throughout the year. So that'd
Okay.
be a good. I think it's not too far from each other either. So I think that would be like top of my head, just like underrated place to see if you haven't yet.
Best sunset you've ever seen?
Best sunset I've ever seen. Oh my gosh, I think it would definitely be in Big Sur.
Oh, dude, that's one of your homes right there.
Big Sur, definitely. Remember during the summer, I don't know when, but the clouds were aligned perfectly with like this rock uh, near in Garapata, and it's crazy because I didn't bring my camera at that time. I only had the iPhone,
Yeah,
and
got a banger.
I got a banger though. And I was like, "Well, this is probably the most perfect sunset I've ever seen." Like the lining up and the snow. Usually in Big Sur during sunset, sometimes it gets like cloudy in the marine layer. When the sun goes down, you don't really see like nice colors.
Hmm.
But that day, it was like phenomenal. Definitely.
And what iPhone were you rocking back then?
It's probably like the iPhone 12.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
actually like, yeah, probably like 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, but the way iPhones are now is insane. So, um, yeah, good stuff. So, yeah, going back and kind of rolling up all those travel experiences and thinking about, just inhale, right? Inhale, what was it? Inspiration, exhale, expression. Do you remember the first time you were inspired by photography? Was there like a particular moment, person, place?
for sure. I think growing up, I've always been like, I always appreciated art, like views and stuff and scenery. Like I was a young kid. I grew up in a city, not really having much access to like beaches. I mean, I grew up in the Philippines, but I never really had access to those things growing up, like beautiful views. But not until like I got into college. I think that's when I was really like thinking of something to do, and that's a hobby and passion. And that's when kind of through Instagram, that's when I kind of like more realized that wow, I'm really inspired by like beautiful landscapes that I see on Instagram. It's like, wow, this is so, the art of this, like capturing a scene. How do people do it? Like, there's so many beautiful places in the world. That's where it got me. And then, through the platform, I was able to be inspired. But like one day, I want to be able to go there, like Yosemite for the first time. But what really inspired me was actually astrophotography, and that's what really like, man, I want to capture that. You know, as soon as I saw the photo, that the Milky Way, and I think that was the moment I was like, all right, this is like a hobby that I want to pursue. And man, picking up that first camera was like, took me to places I haven't been.
Yeah, dude, you were one of the first people that I knew that was so good at astrophotography, and I remember seeing your work at Borrow Lenses, which was really wild. I was like, dude, it's crazy how you have that frame there, and everyone just borrows gear there. And I think it'd be cool to actually break down some of your favorite work. How's that sound?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some of my favorite work for sure is like tying back to astrophotography,
Yeah,
because for me, like I kind of like saw that as like fishing. People fish. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of effort to just like wait and first of all go to the destination where you want to shoot that. And I think one of my favorite works for sure was like a time lapse montage that I did, like Northern California, or like Hollister, Big Sur, like you know in the Eastern Sierras. I think this is one of the catalysts actually for me. Like, dude, it's more than a passion, more
yeah,
than a hobby. And when I realized like Hype Beast like featured my work, they had a
dude,
whole campaign.
that's
They had a
so
whole
crazy.
campaign called Hype Beast Out Here. It's kind of like a whole trend back then. Like the whole travel thing was became a trend during like 2015, 2016, where Hype Beast had a whole campaign like go outside, explore and stuff. And
Yeah, and
yeah,
in
they
fact, what
featured
we
my
can
work.
do is I can actually show you that right now here. So the people listening won't be able to see this, but I wanted to share this anyway, and then I could just talk about it before you break it down. So let me go ahead and share that here. One sec. All right, can you see this?
I see it.
Yeah, man. Walk me through this. I mean, you did this collage. So what we have here is like a ton of time lapses together, and it's featured on Hypebeast. Walk me through your edit.
Man, oh yeah. For me, it's like I had all these like time lapses. It's like a span of like a month or two. So I just wanted to go to these places. I was in a high of
Yeah,
just like, I want to go to all these places and capture the Milky Way. Is it a summer of like 20, I think, what year was this? 2015 or 16? And I was like, I never knew how to put a video together, and I had to like,
was
do
this one of your
my,
first videos?
for sure. I would say
Wow.
time lapse is one of my first videos. I
Yeah.
never knew how to edit like travel videos back then, but I was like, I can compile photos and turn into videos. Like, I was dabbling into After Effects back then and figured it out, like YouTubing it. And I was like, when all this came together, I was like, yo, like I know it's a short clip, but people don't realize that, how long it takes for you to do a time lapse. I mean,
All the work involved.
each photo takes like about like 30 seconds to take, and 1 second is 24 frames. So the 5 second clip you're seeing is actually 2 hours or 3 hours of like just
Yeah.
long exposure, you know, uh, every 60 seconds or 30 seconds.
How did so you just used Hypebeast hashtag and they found you?
Yeah, I use that hashtag HB out here, and then like one of the creative persons at Hypebeast like DM'd me. It's like, hey, you know, can you send us your work? We love this. And then that's one of the first things they actually posted, the time lapse. And then shortly after, they reached out to me like, hey, can you send me your best work? And they actually featured me again. Like I did a Hypebeast takeover,
Dude, so
which is
crazy.
insane. So for like every day, like for a whole week, they posted one photo of me taking over and asked to, they gave me like, hey, give us a caption for each photo, we'll feature it.
Yeah, for those
So
who don't know, Hypebeast is like one of the biggest like lifestyle magazines out there. I mean, currently they have like 10 million followers. Um, I mean, tell me what that was like. What was that experience like when you got featured? What were you thinking? What were you feeling at the time?
and at the time, I was super surprised. Like, dude, like this is crazy. One of the craziest things, like for your work to be recognized by like a platform that you kind of rock with. Like Hypebeast is like a sneaker brand.
Yeah,
They
yeah, they
don't
started off that
normally,
way.
yeah, they don't normally post stuff like this, and for them to appreciate art like this, and for them to, uh, and also like see like the effort stuff like that goes on to it. I think it's a super dope like opportunity, and for me, I was so encouraged. Like, wow, like people actually love this kind of work, and for me, it's like if I can do this for a living, if I can just do this all day, and that'd be a dream. Who would have
Yeah,
thought?
we're gonna get back to that. I think I think this feature is huge for you. We were talking offline about some more of your other work here. So this is another shot you sent over. Um, it was a bonsai rock. Can you explain the thought process and the shot?
For sure. Oh man, it's probably one of my favorite shots because like um, it's kind of one of my dream shots. Actually, I've been wanting
Mm.
to get this shot for so long because it's only in a month where the Milky Way aligns with the
Yeah,
bonsai right
the
there.
framing is crazy.
Yeah, so this actually shot around probably like 2:30, 3 a.m. And good thing I was already in Sacramento at the time. It took about like 2 hours to get there,
Yeah,
and I just remembered hiking in the dark, with a couple of friends going here, and I was like, yo, like it's about to align. It's like my dream shot. I was like adrenaline. It was like 2 o'clock or 1:30 at night. I was like, dude, like this is it right here. And I think we saw a nice framing of the rock, and I was looking through my Sky Guide app. I was like, yo, it's like literally the core is literally on top of the rock.
yeah,
And
that
it's
must have been
crazy.
exhilarating.
My gosh, like the first shots that came out, it's like, yo, like it's probably one of the best moments I've ever been a part of for sure. Because I've been waiting for it for like maybe like 4 years for me to get this moment.
Really,
Yeah,
dude. Yeah, and that's the thing about these type of shots is I think a lot of people, um, yeah, they know you got to stay out at night to go get it, but you got to also be super patient.
Yeah,
And
patience for sure. And like, and after you get the shots and you're done, and think about it, is like, dang, I have to drive back home. That was
I
like
know, right? It should be
the
like
stuff you
4 hours
don't
later.
realize, like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's worth the sleepless night for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's once you look back at the shot, and especially when you frame it, like everything becomes worth it,
Yeah.
right? It's like a moment you cannot let go. Um, cool. And then I want to talk about this shot here, which is the keyhole. To me, this is personally one of my favorite shots of you. You've taken the shot a few times,
Yeah.
but I don't think a lot of people realize how hard this shot is to get. Can you
Oh
explain?
yeah.
Can you explain like how to? So this is in Big Sur. What we're looking
Yeah.
at is a shot of Big Sur, and there's like light coming in, like that looks like a keyhole.
Yeah, for sure. It's actually at Pfeiffer Beach.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's actually on the left side of the beach when there's a little cave there, and I just saw a light like leaking in. I was like, "Yo, I need to get close there." Kind of just like risked it. Got a little
oh,
close, got
you
a little
got in
wet
there.
in my
Yeah,
legs. Went halfway there, and for me to get kind of like put my camera up a little bit, like above my waist, and
risk your
man,
gear.
you see the rush. If you see the water rushing in that shot, as like I try to hold still as much as I can.
Yeah,
Being like just the all the waves coming at me.
dude,
But yeah,
so
I'm glad
good.
you appreciate that, man. It's actually one of my favorite shots. Also, like, so one of those underrated scenes, right? Like, you see, like,
Yeah.
where is this? It could be anywhere, but you don't realize that's in Pfeiffer. So,
All right, last shot. You didn't take this, but you helped me take this. So this is
yo, that's
yeah,
me.
this is you. For those listening, it's a shot that got featured. It's my photo. It got featured on an ad, CNN, Nat Geo, New York Times sponsored. We did a trip into Iceland, and we had an ad agency just feature this ad in American Airlines, which was pretty dope. Um, but I never got your. I mean, we kind of talked about it, but give me your perspective on this shot because you're obviously in the frame. What were you thinking? And yeah,
Oh,
tell people.
I think, to be honest, like capturing this scene, right? Who would have thought it would be in the ad like this? For me, I was like, I'm just so glad that we made it to this cave because the hike there was freaking insane, dude. Like, I
Dude,
just
inside
like,
of a glacier.
I think all of us like, and we never hiked in a glacier. First of all, I think it took like maybe like 5 miles to get here in a glacier, like thin ice, just walking through like crazy, you know, crazy landscape.
Hmm.
And for us to get down here is like, it's probably the wildest things I've ever seen. And of course, knowing us, we always fool around and we we shoot together. And it's actually just for a troll, right? We're just not even thinking about like creative. We're just like, hey
Yeah,
man, let's get me being like abducted by aliens real quick, and I made
is
me
that what
jump
you
in the
said?
air.
I kind of
I,
forgot what you
this
said.
is really what I was thinking about. Like, yo, it looks like a spaceship. Like for me, like if I just jump in the air, like I'm about to like, you know, be abducted by aliens.
I totally forgot that. Yeah, that's exact. When we were in the glacier, it felt like we were in a UFO. It felt
Mm,
like we were in some like another planet. And so
for
yeah,
real.
when you jumped like that, I was laughing my ass off. In fact,
Yeah,
everyone was, and I was like, "That's
yeah.
hilarious, bro." I was going through the show, I was going through the photos, and I was like, "Wait, this is actually probably one of my favorite shots." And lo and behold, the agency thought it was a great shot too, and they used it. And so that backdrop was hilarious, man. I think
Yeah, how do they even like? Who chose this photo? Like, did they choose it? You sent it in the
you know,
gallery.
I don't. Oh, you know what? I think I sent them all the photos because I think one of the agreements for the trip was to provide them all the photos, and I think
Yeah,
they saw this one, but they had no idea about the story, which makes this one of my favorite stories and photos to talk about.
yeah. It's almost insane moments. Like, this is like one of those things. I'm not gonna think about getting featured or anything. It was gonna just jump for
Yeah, it was
everybody.
just some stupid shit. Like here's the shot, and then like you would think there was some magical production planning behind this. Nah,
Yeah,
it was just you pretending to be abducted by aliens.
hell yeah. And some guys laughing after this shot.
For real, dude. For real.
Who would have thought? Man? That's freaking crazy, bro.
Yeah, so I appreciate you being the model for one of my favorite shots.
Of course. Thank you
um,
for sure.
so I want to go back a little bit. Um, we talked about a little bit of your creative work, which we'll definitely go back to later in this podcast. But let's go back down memory lane even more, back to before you were a creative. And so before all this work you did, you were working at Stanford, and you also studied at San Jose State. can you tell your audience what you were doing?
Yeah, I was at San Jose State studying for the public health degree, and I was at Stanford working at the nutrition department. You know, my whole thought process back then I was like, let me just get my foot in the door in the healthcare industry, and if I get a job here eventually with my line of work, through public health, whatever, then that would be like that'd be easy.
Yeah.
And but that time it's kind of like the transition of me like falling in love with like photography and just traveling and stuff. And in the back of my mind, it's like, when I'm working at Stanford, I was like, all I think about was like, when's the next trip?
Mm.
When can I
Yeah.
go out again after my shift? And luckily, like I fell in love with astrophotography, so even after work, I was still go on trips somewhere at night, like a Santa Cruz or a Big Sur at night, which is insane. So I find every excuse to just go out, explore and find an excuse to like, hey, hit up my boys, when we're going, where we're going next,
Yeah.
So that I think that kind of fueled me to just like, all right, let me just stick to this job and at least I have a hobby and a side now, like I feel fulfilled. So working a 9 to 5, how it is, how exhilarating it is without having anything, an outlet to express yourself, being
Yeah. It
stuck at a
sounded
nine to
like
five.
this was like your creative outlet whenever you were done with work.
Yeah.
And whenever, what made you decide to choose public health at the time? Do you know? Was it like an influence from family, or were you into healthcare, or you know?
Yeah. I mean, as a Filipino, like we're always encouraged to take nursing. So I was trying to see if I had it in my blood to like pursue that. And fortunately, like I during college never really like, got good grades in bio and physio, and I was like, let me stay in healthcare. Let me just find some other like outlets where I could still be in healthcare, and I'm already in there deep. So I saw there was public health, and it's still like in the healthcare scene, but more in the background. I was like, oh, it's kind of more fitting. I like being in the background. I was like, there's so many outlets in that field through like community work, through um, also like serving like the community. Sorry, serving the community, and there's so many outlets in that profession. Being in public health. Um,
Yeah, I think being Filipino, service is kind of in our blood, and I think I totally get the pressures of working a healthcare job. I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially being a Filipino creative. And did you have the did were your obviously your friends supported you on your creative work, but did you have that support with your family? Did they enjoy your work? Did they support you?
yeah, it's one of those things like, oh man, it's kind of crazy because when I found out, like when I told my family I did photography, and I was like, no, it's not like the regular just taking pictures of like
It's different. Yeah.
kids or families. No, this is like landscape stuff, and they were like, wow, like they're actually amazed because like they haven't seen anything. They don't really go on adventures like that. So for them to see like a different perspective of like views, and I'm making art that way, and I'm just very happy that like I have like a medium, to to uh, to actually to go outside, and instead of doing drugs and other things, might as well just like, yeah, that's fine. Whatever makes you happy, and just showing like my mom, like my dad and my sister, like showing them like, yo, look at Yosemite. You've seen this
Yeah.
before? Like, no, it's so cool. You should frame it. So just getting like seeing their faces when they see like my photos and stuff. Like it's such a cool thing to see, to
Have
experience.
you taken them to those places?
Eventually, yeah, taking them there for the first time, like probably 5 years ago, and they're more appreciative. Like, yeah, we need
Get
to
it?
get
Huh?
out here more. You never really get a chance to. Then we have access to these places. It's not too far from where we are.
Yeah, I remember the first time I took my mom and dad to Yosemite. They were like literally mind blown because we were up in I think it was Upper Yosemite, so you got to
Yeah,
see kind of like the whole valley, and they were just like, wow, like it's like this is incredible.
yeah, for real,
So
man.
I think it's probably one of the joys you could bring to your folks is just to show them the world.
Yeah,
So yeah, going back into college and Stanford, obviously, it sounded like it wasn't your calling, and we did this trick, or we did not trick, sorry, trip to Iceland, as you mentioned, right? And we traveled a ton with the homies. I like to call us kind of like the boy band of creatives because there's always just a bunch of dudes just wanting to go out and take photos. I honestly think it's the coolest thing. I tell people that all the time. They're like, dude, that's hella dope, right?
Yeah.
Um, but then we took this trip to Iceland, and that's actually when you told us that you were going to do creative work full time, and we
Yeah.
were all like just shook because that's such a big deal for a lot of people, and especially creatives that want to do it full time. It's a big decision to make. So, I'm very curious, when was the moment you realized that you wanted to do this full time? Because obviously working in healthcare, it's a stable job, right? It's a little scary to leave your full time job. But do you happen to know when was the moment you realized that you can do this full time?
Yeah. So during Iceland trip, actually, it was you know, when I was transitioning with my family to move from San Jose to Sacramento,
Hmm.
and what timing it is to go on a trip with the boys. And in my heart, I was like, man, like this could be my ticket, also to really think about like my next chapter, and about my job because I'm really leaving. And I thought to myself, I was like, when I come back from this trip, in my mind, I I don't want to go work again,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's
So you had it
actually
decided
the
already.
how I decided, and because I'm already moving out of San Jose anyway, and I'm already trying to leave Stanford because like I'm not going to commute back and forth, Sacramento to San Jose or Palo Alto. So
Yeah.
that's when I told my job, I was like, hey, I might not come back after this trip, you know.
You said you might not
So
come back.
yeah, I might not come back anymore. It's gone for a
They're
couple of
like, oh, okay.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was one of the most scariest things I ever like said, like, yo, I'm actually, I have to commit to this to try it out, right?
Yeah.
So, mine, I was like, hey, you have a degree, I know like some way, somehow it's gonna find me back again, with my craft, with photography, and now driving into video at that time, it's gonna find its way, and I realized like going to college is like what your degree is not really what you're gonna end up doing,
Hmm.
exactly. So in my mind, it's like follow your dreams, just follow what your heart wants. And hey, you're moving to Sacramento and try it for 6 months. In my mind, I was like, I have nothing to lose. I'm moving out to a new place. Let me just try something. And I had to kind of just, step my footing and make some connections out there in my mind. As soon as I land, move to Sacramento, let me dive in full time. And that time I was like, in my skill set that time was like running social media, creating
Yeah.
content,
You're
as I
really
did
good
in the
at that.
past. And I was like, I can find something, some way, somehow to find a client out there. So that's like, hopefully that answered that part.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that is perfect timing, and I could totally relate to that because I moved to San Francisco just a couple months ago, and it was a whole new chapter. And while I was here, I wanted to also try something new, and this is why we're doing the podcast. And um, going back to moving to, because I totally forgot about that. You moved to Sacramento, and that kind of influenced your decision as well. Walk me through kind of like the first like few months. What was that like? Were you successful off the ground? What were some of the connections that you made?
Yeah. So when I moved to Sacramento, it was timely that one of my good friends, Theo, he was working at a coffee shop called Pancho Mama Coffee.
Oh, did you know him
And
already?
I knew him from like back then. I haven't spoken to him like 10 years, prior to that.
Okay.
And, I saw on Facebook that their Midtown location was opening. And I reached out to him. I was like, hey, man, like, let me visit you. And we chopped it up. And he already knew like my background. Like, he's seen my work before, the photos and stuff like that. And he was like, man, like, our cafe, like, we have somebody doing our social, but we need somebody like you, understands like, how to reach the Instagram crowd a little bit, and just
Mm,
know how to make good stuff. And yeah, and that's kind of like, you know what, let me just try. Let me just create something, you know, um, for them. So me and Thea just collabed, like, hey, let's create like this dope coffee video. I had my iPhone that time only,
I
because
remember
moving
that.
to, yeah, man, backstory, like before I moved to Sacramento, I was like, yo, like if I'm gonna start with something, I need to at least have some like, dough in my pocket. So I actually sold my camera gear
Yeah, you were
at
iPhone
that
only for
time.
like Well,
Yeah,
almost a year, right?
almost a year. So yeah, so I shot my only iPhone content for them first, and did a little coffee B-roll with my iPhone, and like the CEO like loved it, and he was like, "Hey, like Aaron, can I sit down with you? Think about like what do you do? Like kind of get to know me a little bit, and what I do for work and stuff. Like, hey, I'm actually just freelancing right now, and here's what I can do for you. Like, I can run social media, or I have like, already have like experience with that, running Wanderlust Collective. Back then the travel page, um,
Yeah, which was kind
and
of one of our sponsors for the Iceland trip, which was really
yeah,
cool.
it was. So I have an idea already. Like being a consumer at Instagram, we know what people want. So I had to kind of walk him through that, and yeah, just getting pretty much photos. And he was like, "Hey," CEO was like, "Hey, like let me pay your retainer, of
Oh
this
yeah,
much." And I know you don't have a camera right now, but you can use mine. So he had a Nikon camera. I was like, I can work with that. So for me, it's like it's not about the gear, right? It's about as long as I can
yeah.
capture something. So yeah,
Dude,
man, that
that's
was
what
like
I'm so impressed
yeah,
with you about that. You're very scrappy when it comes to like work because you can literally shoot on anything and it'll look like a banger. It's so sick.
yeah,
Um, what are your? I mean, to me, that just tells me that it's not the gear at all. It's
yeah.
about the creative process. When you were talking to that CEO, like, I mean, how did you pitch? How did you pitch that?
It's
Like,
like yeah. He kind of knew like what they were looking for too. I was like, hey, like I know we can create like short form content, or just like from I told him like I did some research. It's like yeah, like for customers to go to your page, especially on Instagram as a cafe, like 80% of people actually look at your page.
yeah,
So you need to have consistency, the look, and especially like consistent stories and little videos here and there. People love that, and he was like, "Hey, can we do something consistent like that? How would that look?" I kind of just gave him a number, and something to work with, free coffee for me. It's like, I'm just there to work. I'm just there to work. Just like you bring my laptop or something, and then just like get free coffee and get paid, and just like work with the baristas to do something creative with them. So that was actually one of my first like clients.
yeah. When you think about that experience of just well, yeah, doing a lot of free work and then finally getting that retainer. What are some lessons that you learned from that? Obviously, like it's not about the gear. You mentioned that already.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the lessons I would learn is like, you know, don't be scared um, to kind of present what you're worth. Like you have this expertise that they don't have, and they don't have time to do the things that you do. So for me, it's like
Hmm.
that's what for me, it's like time and value. So I kind of like told them is like, hey, like how much time you're going to spend, you running this yourself, and see how much money you lose every day if you don't do this, if you're not bringing awareness.
Yeah,
So kind of the urgency, making them feel like, yo, this if you need to hop on this now. I told them like this is 2018, dude. I kind of saw the future is like digital content would be the king in the next few years.
yeah, and
So
you
just
were
having them
already
back
like
in,
you had like a following already on Instagram too, so you knew what that was like.
yeah,
And so there was a little bit of trust factor there. Uh, Going back to Instagram, dude, I remember back. I mean, a lot of people consider that kind of like the golden age, right? Um, and like kind of walk me through your first. I think you're at 20K, right?
mm,
But just growing an account back in the day versus growing it now, and what was it like to get that 10, 20K, and what are your thoughts on all that?
yeah, definitely back then, the golden age. Those are the best. Like you can just post anything, and the community was so small back then.
Yeah,
Of like our niche. And back in the day, everybody just wanted to just build community through the platform, you know. And for us, it's like when we post stuff, everybody was really engaging organically back then, and we're so like fond with like meetups, It's like, hey, we
I
just
remember the
want to shoot
meetups.
together.
I met so many
Just
people
want to,
through this.
right? There's so many creatives, and those were like, I guess what Instagram was tended to be, and
Yeah,
before the reach was so easy. When you post, you get more like people view your work more, compared
yeah,
to
it was
now. It's like,
very
uh,
photography focused, and
yeah,
shout out to some people now that are still doing it. Crystal Irene, she's throwing some stuff, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I remember back in the day when like creators like Andy Toe, right? He
Mm.
set up what was that, one of that first community Instagrams that he made? It was
Oh,
like
I
Feedback
forgot.
Nation or
Feedback
something.
Nation.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was dope.
Yeah, and I remember,
Um,
man, like, you actually get to like communicate. Like some of my favorite photographers back then was like Short Stash, like
yeah,
those
still killing
guys
it.
still killing the game, and we're actually like kind of all started together, like at the come up, and seeing where those people are at now, like Andy, of course, like those like the OG Bay Area guys,
Oh yeah,
they know who they are. um, Still, we're all kind of like grew together, and now like seeing them now doing their own thing, and this is inspiring. How like this passion can take you to so many places, and not just like in your work, but also like your career too. Not just like your creativity. I mean, but like where your work is now, you can still use that somehow. You know,
yeah, and you
so
mentioned that too. I mean, we wouldn't have. I don't think we would have met if it wasn't for travel and social media. So
seriously,
very grateful for that. And going back to just so you talked about a little bit on how the transition was, right, from getting your first gig. Obviously now you're crushing it, but when you think back about the challenges you faced when you were transitioning, is there some that you can think about?
yeah, for sure. Oh man, from transitioning from freelance
Going from
to
healthcare to freelance, yeah.
healthcare to freelance. So I think some of the most challenging things from leaving the corporate world for me was like I kind of went on it cold turkey,
Mm,
meaning like I never really had like a solid like foundation to lean on like financially that time. For me, I was like I'm just gonna go for it and figure it out
yeah.
later. Which is
I'm
I
telling
which
you,
I,
man, you're so good at that. I don't know
yeah,
how
I
you do
wouldn't like recommend that to anybody, but
that.
for me, I'm just gonna bank on relationships and bank on just like going through it every month. For me, it's like as long as I build like a solid clientele, that trust my work, in the consistent basis, somewhere somehow, it's gonna work itself out. And my goal, like in 2018, when I started freelance, was like in 2 years, I want to have like at least like 3 clients and like making this much amount like in the gig,
Yeah.
so. And yeah, I didn't know how to get there. I knew how to get there, but I know the path wasn't gonna be easy. And just really like, I think in this industry, what I learned is like, relationship is a currency as a creative,
Yeah, 100% agree.
and your network will be your net worth. Who you're
Hmm.
surrounding yourself with, not just like your clients, but the people who's in your circle. Like who's supporting what you do. They're seeing that your work that you do, and people put you on. Because the thing is, like, if you have homies and just friends who see, like, man, you're so passionate what you do, I'm gonna find ways to like, put you on other people. Hey, you should hire this guy. You should like see his work. He'll do a good job. So, but yeah, I think like that's what I think was some of the most challenging thing is like that part. And yeah, I wouldn't advise that to anybody. Make sure if I was to give somebody advice, make sure you got something, a cushion,
Yeah.
and keep your job until like your freelance work and your regular job kind of seesaws a little bit. Once you
Yeah.
start making more than the other, and yeah, just be wise with
I think
it.
it
And
kind of helped that you also, because you could have easily stayed in San Jose, paid rent,
mhm,
right? But you made the decision to move with your family back in
mhm,
Sacramento,
yeah,
um, and so that definitely helps too. And I think a lot of people think about that. I mean, that's the reason what I did. I moved back with my parents to pay off some debt. Um, but yeah, I mean, going network is net worth. I totally agree, and I think that this industry especially, it's very like, we all have our own thing. We all are creative people, and we take pride in that. We have certain things that we like. We do our own personal work, but at the same time that we also kind of have to foster relationships, and it's very competitive out here, but at the same time we also got to support each other. And I think I think you're I think you're very good at that. Just being able to foster relationships out of the blue and making sure people are heard and making sure businesses are heard. And because businesses, I mean, they're run by people. It's
Mm.
not it's not just not just a number on a spreadsheet. It's people at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
when you think about what you've done, I mean, you kind of mentioned already, but if you can go back to prepare yourself for this career, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Yeah, for sure. I think, like I said, like it's not, because people think like, oh man, I want to dive in this full time right away. Like you just never going at it on a whim.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge list of a checklist of what you need to do to hop on, from a corporate to freelance life, right? Like, but I think if I was to do it over again, I would keep my job, but be strategic on like, really crafting your skill set, like learning how to take better videos, learning how to like be a better problem solver when it comes to working with clients, working on the business side of things, studying that prior to being a freelancer, because that's one of the things that people overlook. Just
Mm,
people become a freelancer, but they don't know how to get paid. They don't know how to do the back end business taxes afterwards. So I think studying really like uh, how to be a business owner more than, of course, you're going to be creative regardless, but if you're gonna dive into this full time, is like you got to study being a creative business owner. I think that's one of the things I kind of learned along the way, um, and build a niche before you start go full time. Like
yeah.
find like clients that you really love working with. Is it real estate? Is it like Is it a, I don't know, a hospitality you want to deal with? Is it automotive? Is it like corporate businesses and stuff? Music videos. I don't know what it is. Whatever it is that you like doing, just build that and understand, discover yourself as a creative, what you really want to do, and then slowly build that clientele little by little. I think that's what I've like would have done back then.
Yeah. And honestly, it's hard to say who our clients is, but I think like that's the reason why a lot of us get into this work is because we get to choose the people that we get to work with.
Yeah.
And there's a very specific client that would love to touch base on, and that's cheat code. Cheat code is. Can you explain to the audience what cheat code is?
Yeah, cheat code's pretty much like a mental health platform, that it's kind of like that's working to break the stigma of like mental health. And going cheat code, what cheat code does is that they want to break the stigma, one, but also in the foundation side of things, we want to provide access to like the underserved communities, like mental health resources, through mental health coaches, um, especially like the black and brown community. Never really has access to that because it is expensive, to receive that. But number two, there's so much education for people to, talk about mental health or to
Hmm.
receive that. There's so much like stereotype with like working on your mental health, right? So
Yeah.
that's what they do. They're more of like a mental health platform and a mental health resource.
Shout out to Mondo, the homie.
Dr. Mondo, yeah, man, what a
Um,
guy.
is that Chico's the one where you also work with other athletes too, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Can
So
you?
cheat code, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, tell me what that was like. I mean, you've worked with NBA players, NFL players, like that sounds hella fun. Can you describe that
Yeah, it's
experience?
fun. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, knowing Mondo, Dr. Mondo for like the past like 5 years, I kind of seen his journey too as like a mental health therapist, mental health coach, and in 2020, that's when he kind of found an opportunity to work with like athletes,
Mm,
in this space. And I think one of his first clients was like a major league baseball player, and now he's like a World Series champion. And one of the things is like, hey man, like this is like a good opportunity for you to actually capture their stories, their mental health stories, the clients that he's worked with. So, and during that time, I was like, yo, this is such a dope opportunity. Like, it's kind of one of those things like, man, like for me, like full circle as a public health student who loves like about the back end work and,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and like shining light on stories that, uh, doesn't really like get exposure as much. Like mental health is one of the things. I'm all for it, man. So I understand like the need of that, and especially like athletes who wants to share their stories because they have such a big platform. So yeah, one of my first work was interviewing this guy in Atlanta. His name's Dansby Swanson. He's like a World Series champion now. He plays for the Cubs now.
Mm.
But for me, I don't never really watch baseball. But for me to interview him and for him to talk about his mental health story and him publishing that and seeing the response of people like, wow, like thanks for sharing your story, and it empowers other people to be vulnerable and also share their as people our age too to do the same thing.
A lot of
I think
millennials.
it's a privilege. Yeah, definitely a lot of millennials. So that's pretty much our target too. Millennials, Gen Zers, who we want to encourage. But it's a dope opportunity, man. Like from him to NFL players like Chris Godwin.
Dude, he's
It's
got a story for sure.
one of the clients for sure.
How
But
did you actually should have asked you this earlier, but um how did you get work with CHEACODE and how did you meet Mondo?
yeah, so I met so after working in Pachamama, I actually saw Pachamama as like kind of like my workspace, but also
Yeah,
as a
your office.
place to network with other people.
Hmm.
So being at the cafe a lot, seeing my boy Theo there working, he's like I said, like having homies to put you on, and he was one of the main people actually um, that kind of showed me Sacramento a little bit, and he was the one who introduced me to my friend Mondo, who work with Cheat Code now.
Yeah. Oh, was he? Was
So
Mondo a guy that frequent the coffee shop?
yeah, and then Theo pretty much told him like, hey, if you need to talk to a person who has a healthcare background ish, um,
Damn.
and you should talk to him. He loves like working with people like that, who's very like a catalyst, trailblazers and stuff. And yeah, I connected with Mondo, and saw his vision and the way he is, which is kind of like a goofball like us and stuff. And I feel like, man, this relationship would be like you know super beneficial for the both of us in the future.
It's like a dream relationship. I mean, you guys. He's in mental health. You worked in public health. You're creative. Perfect fit.
Yeah, yeah, man. So yeah, man, the growth and where he came from then to now, it's insane.
Yeah.
So
No,
the
good
work that
stuff,
we
man.
do.
Is there anything that you learned? Because I mean, obviously, you've heard different stories from athletes about mental health, and I think mental health's a big thing, and as being a millennial too, because there's so much transition involved. Is there anything that you've learned about mental health after working with Chico?
Yeah, I think working with cheat code, I think what I've realized is that there's such a need for mental health access and resource, and I feel like after 2020 was like the start of like a movement. I feel like in the mental health
Yeah.
space, because like the whole social disparity that we had, the social like injustice that happened during
Oh, so much
2020. A lot
happened
of
during that
people,
year.
so many people were riled up. Top of that with COVID, right? A lot of people stayed home, and depression were skyrocketing, and you know, a lot of people didn't have much of an outlet during that time. And working with cheat code is like I was educated on the fact that there's not much access, especially for the Black and Brown community,
Hmm.
of this issue. And one of the main causes of like you know um, causes of like our health problems actually depression and stress,
Yep. Yep.
especially
And
as millennials, right? We do so
millennials,
much.
millennials, and
And
creators, because we tend to overwork.
yeah, so for me it's like, man, I want to be a part of that movement to shine a light on that. So working with Chico, I saw their vision, what they want to do for the community, and and social media also using it as a platform. um, yeah, man, I learned so much about it, and so much need to this day. If you notice, like after 2020, like a lot of platforms that like kind of came about, like BetterHelp came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Calm was a big thing, like kind of stepped up to the plate, and other different like mediums and sources. Like so, the goal for a cheat code is to be kind of like one of the pioneers in that platform in a way. And yeah, we have people in place, and we have like our board who actually supports what we do. you know, very important people. Um, but yeah, man, so glad to be part of that. Especially being in the space now as a millennial. So I'm still learning, but definitely like I'm just glad to be a part of this foundation, to shine light on like stories like this, mental health stories.
Yeah, I think you guys do amazing work, and keep it up. And actually, I wanted to go talk about being a millennial, and let's talk about you as the millennial.
Oh yeah, forgot I was a millennial. Just kidding.
um, I mean, you kind of told me a little bit about your 20s, but when you think about what that was like, you were a healthcare student, right? Going into freelance, a lot of change, moving to Sacramento. When you look back at the 20s, kind of that decade, now that you lived it, what do you think your 20s should be about?
How to relive it? Yeah, I think 20s. It's about really figuring out yourself, your worth, and actually recognizing that you're not just made to settle for less. I think that's when you really need to surround yourself with people who want to push you to do the best, the best of your ability. I think that's when you really have to um, have like a more tight knit circle in your 20s, and you're gonna have a lot of friends coming out of college
Yep.
and or high school, whatever. But I think like once you reach like the mid 20s, is like that's when you really have to value like your circle and finding people who really like are they there to really invest in me, or am I ready to invest in this other person? I think if I was to, I think I kind of did that. I think I realized that early on that like quality over quantity with your friendships, and also like don't rush the process of finding what you want to do. Dabble into many things, take risks. Find things that you're curious about and try it. Say like live up your 20s. Like yeah, that's very true. If you want to like learn something that should people like, oh, I don't think it's gonna be worth it my time, but I'm really curious. Like, dude, try it. Just do it. Um, there's so many things I wanted to do. Like martial arts. I want to try that early on.
Yeah,
Should
yeah.
have done that. Like little things like that. But now I'm in my, when once you get to 30s, late 30s, like I think that's like when you apply like a lot of those things you should learn in your 20s. Like I think embracing the failures in your 20s. I think that's one of the things that I learned um, during that time. Embrace your failures and know that like there's gonna be many no's. It's gonna happen, but it only takes like a few yeses to really like get you where you want to be.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of millennials out here that are mid 20s, right? 26, 27. They're kind of on the younger end of a millennial, and maybe they just got their first job, right? Maybe they're also working in healthcare, and maybe it's because their parents told them to, but they're not fulfilled, right? So they're doing a side hustle that's a creative job, but they're thinking about doing that full time, or they want to go all in on that idea. You did that, and so what is some advice you can give to someone that's considering doing that?
Yeah, if you're thinking about going full time, I'd say like be strategic about it. About you're going full time with the creative work, and I'd say like don't do what I did of just going full time creative like in a whim, cold
Yeah.
turkey. Like yeah, I think one of the main advice that I would give to young creatives who's still working like a full time job is like I feel like going into the creative field is not for everybody full time, right? You can be creative, but going on it full time is not for everybody. I think what's gonna separate you from like other people and what's gonna keep you longer in the industry is actually loving the work. I think
Mm-hmm,
learn to
mm-hmm.
love the art. Learn to love the creative process. Like even if I was to go full time, like back then, you know, if I was to do stuff for clients, it's because I want to get paid because I love to do it, even if I don't get paid.
I
So
know.
if,
I've seen you do so much work just because you want to do it. It's fun for you.
yeah, so get to that level. I think just learn to love the process. I think just learn to love the art of creating stories, creating stuff that you want to do, and once you're ready to like lead, of course, being strategic about like um, building your clientele first, learning how to run a business first, um, until it seesaws whatever you're making with your full time job, then you'll know it's a good time to transition. I think, but the main core is like, if I was to, you know, not get paid for a video or shooting photos and stuff, like, would I be happy? Because
Yeah,
that's kind of like
that's
your
good
you're
advice.
kind of like your temperature check is like, dang, you're doing this for money or you're doing it for the love of the work.
Mm,
So for me, like, even if I don't get paid to do this, like, take the money away, like, dude, like, it's fine. I'm gonna do it because, like, that's when you kind of see your worth. Like, you choose things that you want to, like, you want to produce for. And for me, it took me a while to understand, like, what I want to do. I dabbled into real estate videos, dabbled into, like, uh just like random things, random shoots that,
yeah,
man, like, if I was to do this full time, bro, like, I would want to do it. But what I love the most is, like, give me work that's, like, has an impact. Like, the certain nonprofit work's pretty cool
yeah,
too
like the
for
cheat
me. It's
code
like
stuff.
cheat code stuff's pretty cool. As long as it makes an impact, like corporate storytelling is cool, like fundraising, like a bigger impact, like little documentaries that shine a
Weddings,
light on something,
telling love
weddings.
stories.
hmm And the more you just, like, dabble into, you know, um, things that you're curious about, you slowly start to eliminate the things that you don't really want to do until you really condense that to this one thing. Like, okay, cool. If I'm only going to take work that's impactful, that's fulfilling, that's inspiring, educating, whatever, then I'm going to stick to that. All other things, it's going to go out the door. Stick to that lane, and that's what's going to keep you far.
I think that's so important to think about too, because like you said, it took you a while to find the right clients that you wanted to work with, and you have to dabble in this industry. I mean, you're going to be shooting grad shoots. You're going to be doing some boring video work, but if you stick with it, like find energy, find the work that gives you the most energy. I think is what I'm hearing from you, and then that'll help out with longevity.
For sure, man.
So we talked about your 20s. You're in your 30s. How does it feel to be 30?
I used to feel to be 30, man. Just turned 30 like a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in a new decade, man. It's a whole new mindset shift. So now it's like, all right, I think every day counts now. Every single day counts. Being married also like a month ago.
Congrats, by the way.
Thanks, man. So, just being with my partner now, it's like, all right, we're in this age where we can actually learn from, like, our 20s, and now, like, let's build foundations, the right ones, the right bricks to set up this house. So, even not just like for our relationship, but also as an individual. Now we know what we're worth, what we're capable of. Like, we learned from our mistakes back then as individuals. Now, like, I think at this age is like quality now. Like, let's figure out every day, like, has to be productive, and fruitful. Asking myself every day, what can I learn something new every day? And what can I eliminate old habits back then that I can, like, you know, to build new healthy ones now. Um,
What
but
were some
also,
of
like,
those? What were some of those? Do you happen? Can you share some of those bad habits you feel like you had back in the
yeah,
past?
for sure, man. I think organization and time management is
Hmm.
one of the big things. I mean, being in our 20s, like, you know, it's so hard not being, like, organized because you have so many things going on,
Yeah,
in your
college.
day to day in college, but now being in this industry, like, you have a lot of client deadlines to do, from editing to shooting to, like, of course, most importantly, it's like, spending time, like, with yourself. Investing time with yourself is, like, I think it's very key that I feel like, learning, being in my 30s now, and what I learned in the past. It's like, back then I get so caught up in work, all I want to do is that, and I
Yeah.
forget about, like, my health. I forget about, like, exercise and investing in your own creativity too. Like, finding time to shoot for yourself and not for anybody. I think once you don't have that, it's so hard to be fueled creatively, but also you get burnt out. So, and I felt that before, creative burnout. Like I don't
Yeah,
want, I don't want to
can
do
you
this
describe
anymore.
that feeling? Because I think a lot of people can relate to that. What was that experience like?
So if you don't know what a burnout is, it's like doing something over and over and over again until you feel like don't not doing it anymore, you know. And I think that's a result of like imagine a cup, right? First, when you start this creative work, you're so on fire.
Yeah, you're just like
You're so your
filling the
cup is
cup.
so full, you know.
Yeah.
Once like you keep like giving that water just like different places, and it's not being filled up, and then you get burnt out. Like there's no, you know, you have no fuel yet to give.
Okay, did the water just kind of like tip over
You
and
run
just
dry, and you
empty?
feel like you're
Yeah.
dreadful. You're tired all the time. I don't want like I don't your productivity goes down. I don't want to like I'm lazy to edit. I'm
Mm.
lazy to even think about new things, and I feel like everything's the same. Um,
How
yeah,
did
man, that's
you
like the worst
overcome that?
feeling, and
Because
the
you're
way I can relate to this too, and to really recover from that is like you know really be a spend time with yourself and like invest back in yourself again, and then do things that you want to do,
do
and
you
spend
remember
and have time for that.
what like do you remember so the moment you burned out and then because I feel like you definitely recovered from that. Um, what were some of the things that you did to recover from a burnout?
I think it's being honest with myself is one of the big things. Just to really acknowledge, like, hey, you're burnt out, man. You need
Just
to
say it to
rest.
yourself.
Say it
Yeah.
to yourself and make it real. Like, yo, like you have so much like deadlines and so much things you didn't catch up on because you're burnt out. Be honest with yourself and tell your clients like, hey, like, you know, it's gonna be pushed back because like you're whatever's be honest with them,
Yeah. Be
and
vulnerable.
and be vulnerable, and people would appreciate your vulnerability because the thing is like, you know, the most important thing is like to let go of yourself at that time, not care about the world, and it's acknowledging like you're burnt out. There's people to support you, and be honest with about your situations. And I think that's very key in that time. I think that's a catalyst for sure. If you in your early 20s or even if you're a millennial, like it's gonna happen, but you can always prevent it from happening. And once you start acknowledging like it's like acknowledging that you're in the verge of it, I think that's like the very like first step. And yeah, slowly just like catch up. Let people help you. Literally, like I think that's like one of the good things of having like a strong support group and friend group is like they'll be there next to you and like making sure to check up on you. Like, all right, man, let's work on this together. Let's find ways to like put you back on your feet.
Yeah. I mean, me and David have seen you just your work ethic and you're probably one of the hardest working people that we know. And honestly, that's amazing. But it's also to your detriment sometimes, right? And we sense that with you and at a certain point. But like you said, your support system is so strong. We totally support you, and we're so proud of like where you are now because it's hard to like overstate the effects of burnout because sometimes you don't even realize you're burnt out until like it's serious, right? Do you feel like it got serious at one point, or you caught that before?
Yeah, and I was gonna backtrack to how I got there too. Is like like I told you earlier, one of my first from my first client
Yeah,
to having like many connections now and having multiple clients. Like my goals is to have like multiple clients. Once it got there, I kept saying yes
you kept saying
and
yes. Yeah.
kept saying yes, right? Like I just want to do all the work they want to do, and it gets to get to the point where like you forget to say yes to yourself and then say
Mm,
no to things that you don't want to do. It's a good lesson, I guess, for other young cats and millennials out there. It's like don't forget to say yes to yourself,
yeah,
and
that's really good.
saying no to other things that you don't want to saying no to projects and saying no to commitment um, is saying yes to yourself.
Yeah, especially like what you mentioned. Like once if if you have a game plan, it's not always going to be about the money. Once you're set, you don't have to say yes to everything.
Yeah, and it gets to the point where like it's not about the money, but it's for like your well being and it's for your mental health. You know what I'm saying? Like because it's cool to grind at first, man, but I think like learning from my experience is like knowing like when should I stop taking on things and or taking too much, because unless you have capacity to take it on and like actually deliver quality work afterwards,
Yeah, it just usually
then
goes
go for
downhill.
it. But there's only, yeah, for real, like what I realized is like I'd rather, you know, take 5 things than like do 20 things at once, I'd rather do 5 things well, or no, 5 things excellent than do 20 things mediocre,
Yeah.
you know? So, because that's fulfilling, but that's number two, like you're not going to burn out, and like, you have more time for yourself.
When you're in your 20s, it's okay to work that hard because you have that energy, right? I remember when I was in my 20s, this is when Gary Vee was blowing up on the scene, right? Hustle culture.
Yep.
But when you're in your 30s, especially, if you're in creative work, it's hard to do that. And now you're in your 30s. You got this whole decade ahead of you. What does that what does that look like for you, both creatively in life? Where do you see this decade going?
Yeah, for sure. I think this decade, I feel like it's, I think, no pun intended to this name of the podcast, but
Yeah.
being in his 30s, it's knowing the fact that there's a method to this madness, being a millennial.
Yes,
There's
sir.
methods out there that we can apply what we learned in the past. And I feel like this decade for me, it's like, I think it's, I think it's going to be a lot of, let me see, it's more of like, I guess, expansion,
Yeah, of your
and
knowledge.
also, yeah, expansion of my knowledge, but also learning how to build up, cultivate the younger
Mm.
people too, learning how, because when we were younger, like we always want to be mentored, by other people. Of course, we're
Oh
still
yeah,
gonna be in that mode, right? Like being mentored as a young person to do business, but now, like, all right, being a business owner, you always want to like level up. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? So now, like for me, it's like, what new things can I learn? Finding ways to, learn as a business owner, how to expand myself, how to build a team under me, you know, starting a production team, whatever that is. So I think we're in that position now at our age to cultivate, right? Like it's a new level of inhaling and expressing. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
The 30s version.
The 30s version.
Well, it's
So
it's funny that you mentioned that too. I talked to that a lot with my mentor, and especially when we're in our 30s, we have a whole career ahead of us. We have so much life experience from our 20s, and um, one of the best things you can do is just give back,
yeah,
right? Kind of like what you said. Like, there's people out there that are still trying to learn,
yeah,
and maybe you share that experience with them, right?
for sure, man. And learn too is like being like an individual. There's 3 things that you need to be kind of consuming. Like you have to, the 3 things that you be doing, as a way to be inspired, right? Like you have
Yeah.
to be inspired. You have to inspire people around you, and you have to inspire people under you.
I love that.
So
3 levels to that.
there's 3 levels to that. I think that's what keeps, like, for myself, what makes the world go round, and for me to be sane. Like if you don't have like people inspiring you, and how are you going to be inspired by others? And how are you inspiring other people? And just to be a regular human being, like you get even inspired if you inspire somebody else like under you. It's such a good feeling when you bring up somebody
Yeah.
up, right? Like if you don't know how to do photos, or if you don't know how to do video, but like, hey man, like let me show you the ropes real quick, because it helps me. Like I've been there before, so for me, like, it fulfills me to do that. But also being around you guys, like you guys are like my people. Like we inspire each other, but in our own individual ways, we are inspired by something else. Like you have your own inspirations, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's like for me, like being in my 30s, like I need that. I need that 3 points of like just of exhaling, I would say. No pun intended, right? That's how I exhale. Like pretty much like my it's myself and my creativity and just my whatever I learned in the world. And um, there's another thing too, like super important. Like as you approach your 30s too, I think whatever you do now, like whatever you touch, is like, dude, it's about legacy. So whatever you're building now is like your kids need to benefit from it.
Right.
So it's a generational thing, like certainly, especially if you think about starting a family, like in this decade, right? Like I need to set myself up where I can build generational wealth, could be, and for my kids to benefit from. So it's kind of like in my like, bird's eye view of what I do, right? But it's like, dude, I would never think about that when I was in my 20s.
Isn't that wild? This,
It's wild. So
to
now it's a
think
legacy
that,
thing, man. It's a
yeah,
legacy thing. So whatever I build now, like I'm pretty sure um, it's gonna make an impact, and my family would be a part of would be a part of that, whatever I'm doing. You know.
yeah, and it's crazy. I mean, like this when you're in your 30s, especially the early 30s, you start to think about that stuff, right? It's almost such a crazy mind shift. Even though 30 is just a number, I mean, I feel like you feel it on all aspects. Like your body feels it, your mind feels it. Every part of that number, every part of that age, just is so significant. And
Yeah.
um, you talked about the creative side of your 30s. How about life? I mean, you talked about kids.
Kids, yeah,
what
that's
what what's
definitely
what's this, man? What are we talking about here?
yeah, man, it's definitely in the radar. Talk about it with my wife and stuff. I feel like uh, definitely like the next, the first couple of years of in marriage, I feel like it was sort of savor in on just us being together. Maybe
Yeah,
travel a lot more. Travel with my wife before we have kids, because it's one of the things that I learned like you don't really get to uh, experience. Of course, when you have kids, it's all different. But
it's a
just being
whole
with your
different game.
partner solo, it's like it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I
But
actually wanted to touch on that little bit because man, you guys are a very resilient couple. I mean, you guys have been together for I think what 11, 12 years now,
yeah, I've known him for like 11 years now.
and almost half of that I think you guys are long distance.
Yeah, yeah,
And
we were
so, I'm sure there's people out there that are experiencing that same thing. What advice? I mean, it's been 12 years now. LDR half of that. What advice can you give to people that are in your shoes to keep it going?
for sure, man. I mean, being long distance with somebody for like half a decade, it's not easy. It's a lot of sacrifices needs to be made, and a lot of like friction, man. A lot of this like back and forth of like learning how to communicate like long distance, and learning how to trust each other in the process. Um, and I feel like it has to be a two-way street when it comes to long distance relationships.
Mm.
Both of you guys need to want it to make it work. So it was definitely tough the first few years, like moving from like San Jose to Sacramento. I know it's only a couple hours away, but still long distance is still long distance,
2 hours is
And
still that can be tiring traveling.
yeah, and you only see your partner like once or twice a month out of like the full weeks, and think about it. That's 2 times a week or 2 times a month out of the whole year, So that's like super hard. But now we're married, like we have a lot of unlearning and relearning to do being together again. So like we have to like change our, the way we communicate. Like, oh, we can actually talk about things on the spot now, which is a cool thing. It's a beautiful thing, but it's something that's kind of weird. Like we're not used to that. It's being long distance.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like
It won't,
I've been seeing you guys go out more just because you can, and you
yeah,
should.
doing a lot more. Really like catching up on that quality time, man. That's like,
Dude,
if you're
so
not in
much.
long distance and you haven't experienced it yet, it's like you appreciate quality time like 10 times more.
Yeah,
So, so yeah, man, just give, shout out to all the people listening. If you're in long distance relationships, it's like keep fighting for it, make sure like both of you guys want it, and make it work.
we could totally do a whole another episode on LDR because man, there's a lot of struggles there. But again, shout out to Jovi because it's hard, right? And
Yeah.
especially as a girl in the relationship, it's. I mean, everybody's got their own needs, and and there's four different types of love languages. And do you happen to know hers? What's hers?
Yeah. Hers quality time.
Quality time. See, that's even harder.
Quality time and
And so,
physical touch, which is like
oh,
the worst things, the worst
yeah,
love
both of them
languages to be
in
if you're in long
LDR.
distance.
Shout out to Jovi. Shout out to Jovi.
Shout out to Jovi, my wife. If you're listening to this, we made it.
We made it. We made it. You guys are on a focused journey.
Yeah. Focus journey.
Well, man, this has been fun. I hope you had a great time. Is there anything, after we've talked about kind of like your life, your creative life, just being a millennial, is there anything you want to close with?
You're not alone in this journey, and just know that there's gonna be people who's gonna be there to support you, whether you're thinking about going freelance. Talk about it with your people, the closest friends that you're with, like what you're planning, so they know how to support you in your transition and then a new chapter in your journey. And be smart about your choices. Be strategic about it. Every choice is like how think about like how is like 3 years. How is my 3 years going to be affected by my decision now? There's methods to this madness. That's how I would say it, Jeff. There's methods to
The
this
millennial
madness.
method. Yeah.
There's millennial methods to this, man. So just keep tuning into this podcast, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of methods is going to be shared, and just ways for you to really level up. And that's what I learned about thing too. Like as long as you level up 1% every single day, even 0.5%, just find ways for yourself to just like learn something new, and just feed yourself creatively and be inspired by everything around you. You'll be, yeah, you're gonna go somewhere for sure.
Just got to inhale and exhale, right? Inhale
Yeah,
inspiration.
and don't forget to
Exhale.
breathe, yo. Don't forget to breathe. Just
Yeah, I
keep
feel like I
breathing.
hold my breath sometimes.
I know, right? Don't hold your breath, man. Just keep breathing. It's fine. You get this. You got opportunity to breathe every day, so don't take that for granted.
Well, I appreciate you hopping on, man. Where can people find you? Instagram, Aaron Yabes, and we got our own little business, focusjourneymedia.com.
Yeah,
Quick little
yeah.
shout
Find
out.
us on Focus Journey. If you're getting married in this next couple of years or this year, think about us. Focusjourneymedia.com. Reach out to us. Yeah, follow my social. Mark said Aaron Yabes.
Perfect. Awesome, brother. Well, thanks again. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you too, man. See you soon.
All right, brother. Hey, thanks for checking out the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, we're all there. And make sure to subscribe to our newsletter, where I share the best things I learned from each guest, as well as all the resources to become a better, healthier, and happier millennial. Happy living, and I will see you at the next one.